Hey guys, Deathletter Magic here, and Wizards out of nowhere, and I mean absolutely nowhere. It's a Tuesday. I don't even get this. But they basically just announced, I'm going to call it what it is, a ban announcement for Historic. So if you're confused between Frontier, Historic, and Pioneer, yeah, so is everybody. This is the bullshit one they made up that's arena only. This format exists solely and exclusively to get people to not be as pissed about rotation on Arena, because Arena is standard only basically, and as soon as it rotates, you just lost those cards. They got vaporized, they're worthless. Your whole collection, kaboom. Now they thought, and probably rightfully so, that people couldn't handle that. So they created this format where it's like, no, it's okay guys, you can still use your cards. And honestly, Historic is on his deathbed because they've already announced, we're going to try to merge it with Pioneer. We're going to back design all the sets going back to the start of Pioneer and add them to Arena, and eventually Arena will just be Pioneer and we'll get rid of Historic. That's kind of paraphrasing, and then they followed it up with making a directly contradictory statement, but let's be honest, that's what they're doing. So a lot of people liked Historic because, like, cool, I get to play this old deck that I used to play with and that I miss. I used to play this on Arena during the earlier beta, and it was awesome, and now I can play it again. The problem is, all the toxic shit that people hated, people can play again. And they will, because they want to win, and because most of the community is terrible. They will play the most broken, unfair shit just to get wins. They do not care. They don't care about fun. They don't respect their opponent. And honestly, at this point on Arena, neither do I. About 75% of my opponents are slow-playing, net-decking assholes, and they don't deserve 1 ounce of my respect. So, I'm so shocked that they're picking up some broken shit that was, by the way, previously banned. And then for some reason now they thought, well, in Historic, I bet this will all be okay. Well, surprise, it's not. Oh, and then they added 16 cards or something from Magic's distant history to make Historic even worse. And I mean, there's 3 cards that should not have been put on that list, period. So now to try to salvage some semblance of anything from Historic and make people play it, they're getting rid of 4 cards. And I say getting rid of because I say the cards are banned. They are using the term suspended, and I'll let them explain why they think they're not banning them, even though they're banning them. So the Historic ranked period is around a month old. I literally have no idea what that is. I thought Historic was not ranked. Anyway, we've been eagerly looking over the feedback and data we're gathering on the new format. We're generally happy with what we're seeing there. Really, with good play rates and a fairly healthy looking metagame balance, sure, if that's how you want to put it. Only a couple decks are more than 5% of the meta. That is shocking to me. Absolutely shocking that no deck is played more than 1/20th of the time. I would honestly go as far as to think that they're just lying and they're failing to merge slightly different versions of certain decks. That's almost definitely what they're doing. That can't be true. So anyway, for the most part, win rates are showing a good, healthy spread. There are a couple outliers here, though, that we will be addressing. More info on that below. Now, see, if it was truly 5%, they wouldn't be addressing shit. So they're already lying. I can tell that, in my opinion. So we're happy with how the cards in Historic Anthology 1 have been adopted. Really, because there's a couple you shouldn't have put in there. Where several have found key roles in key decks, and the additions have enabled some fun new archetypes. Fun is not how I describe any of them, actually. We're seeing the new cards appearing in over 20% of the decks used in high-level Historic play. So, I mean, to me that seems low, but also at the same time is high. I would expect it to be higher, but 20% is high. So those micromanaged cards to totally screw with the meta and add a bunch of tribal bullshit, those are in 1 in 5 decks that are used in high-level play. So they say that's a good sign. We've landed about where we wanted to be. Good, useful options, but not something that has warped the format around it. But what about fun and enjoyable gameplay and well-balanced gameplay? Because that clearly is not where you were going with these cards that you added in, quote, Historic Anthology 1. I guess that's what they're calling it. Burning Tree Emissary, which I hate that card, has proved the most popular of the new cards. Cool, ban it. Showing up in both Gruul and Jund shells. The Soul Sisters archetype has also proven popular. Yeah, that's because Life You to Death was an unbeatable deck even, a year ago. So you add that crazy shit to it, yeah. Using Soul Warden and Sarah Ascendant to complete a mono white life gain package. No, real players add black, actually. Overall, play in Historic is tracking slightly lower than we'd like to see. That's because it's terrible and you brought back the worst of the worst and then did nothing about it, which largely seems to be coming from players preferring to play best of one over best of three. Yes, I don't have an hour to play one match. Nobody does. That's bullshit. Okay, nobody's ever going to play best of three. It's too slow. Unless you start enforcing a 5 to 10 second timeout timer to make people actually play at a reasonable speed, I'm not going to ever play best of three, ever. I mean, it would literally take all day to rank up 1/4 of one tier. And if I'm stuck going up against some bullshit toxic AIDS deck that I cannot stand, why the actual would I want to play it 2 more times? Are you kidding me, Wizards? So that's never going to happen, but they go on to say, somewhat surprisingly, we saw about 3 times the rate of games played in the historic launch event, best of one, than we do in the historic ranked queue, best of 3. Now see, those were chronological though, so it might not just be people not wanting to play best of 3, it could also be people just hating the format now, because best of one, it was brand new, it was an event, it was on the front page. They're disregarding all of that, so that's brilliant. This suggests that while best of 3 is the most competitive way to play, the majority of our players still prefer best of 1. And this holds even in the historic format, which we expected to attract more competitive-minded players. Yeah, a bunch of net decking douchebags. With this in mind, we're looking at expanding the importance of best of 1 play in future ranked historic periods. Once again, I had no idea there was a ranked season or period or whatever going on right now for anything other than standard. That's news to me. So the fact that even I didn't know this means maybe people just had no idea what was going on. I mean, nowhere terrifically obvious in Arena did it say, hey, we're doing ranked historic, go play it. It's live now. I think when the event was done, people thought it was done because, I mean, I'll be honest, I had no idea where to play historic. I thought it was only you join unranked with a historic deck and it'll match you up against somebody with a historic deck. That's the last I heard. And hello, that's casual. That's free-for-all. That's unranked. So whatever the hell this was, I don't even know how you get into it, to be honest. So it's not just best of 1, but it's your idiotic design, Wizards, that you have to, take into consideration about why people weren't playing this. So the next section is titled Cards We Are Suspending in Historic. Getting back to those outliers in win rate and diversity, there are a few cards we've identified as being problematic in the historic meta, and we'll be taking action to address those. None of the cards we're acting on here will come as a surprise. Holy shit, they actually said that. They actually typed that in words and hit submit and published it to the internet. Are you kidding me? Let me translate this from what they wrote to what they actually meant. Yeah, this is some toxic broken shit. We all know it. These cards are absolute fucking cancer. We already knew this, but we were too much of little ass to fucking do anything about it. Our policy at Wizards is to always wait for something to not even be a problem, but to be a disaster, a game-ruining nuisance disaster before we even consider taking any kind of action against it. You must suffer through this shit for at least a couple weeks before we do anything to move against it, because Magic is not allowed to be fun, and God help us if we overzealously ban something ahead of time and you have to play one of the other 100 options you have for a deck to build. What the f***? They should have pre-banned the entire f***ing ban list from the history of Standard just as a starting point. Just for starters. Because they were already proven and established to be problematic and broken. And those exact decks, card for card, can be rebuilt right now. What the f*** did you think was going to happen? And all you give us is, none of the cards we're acting against here come as a surprise. Ha 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 ha. Well, f*** you idiots. You should have banned them a month ago. How stupid are you? I bet you guys could guess all 4 of these cards if I gave you about 10 guesses, because there's clearly more than 4 cards that are ban worthy, but they're only banning 4 for now. So number 1, once upon a time, we're seeing much of the same thing in Historic that we saw in Standard and Pioneer. Really? It's almost like it's not the format, it's not the meta, it's not the players, it's the card that's the problem. Once Upon a Time is very prevalent in any top decks playing green, and it is leading to green being general, or being in green in general being overrepresented, I can read, in the meta. Suspending it, more on what suspending means below, should help bring greater deck diversity. Number 2, Field of the Dead. I'm shocked. Who could have seen that coming? Similar to Once Upon a Time, Field of the Dead is constraining Historic in much the same way it affected Pioneer, which actually is the only thing those two cards have in common. They're broken for two completely different reasons. It's having too large of a damping effect on controlling and reactive deck options. So once again, no, it's in control decks. It's in stall and steamroll decks, or turtle and steamroll decks. Suspending this should allow a wider variety of deck archetypes to be viable in Historic. It's not even deck archetypes, it's just this card can't be stopped and can't be beaten. Like, you could board wipe them 5 times and still lose. That's fucked up. And nobody and nothing can interact with lands, basically. So if board wiping a flood card doesn't stop it, and also you have no way of getting rid of the card, that's a problem. The card is inherently broken. It doesn't matter what format you stick it in. The card was a mistake. So the card in a vacuum should be banned in everything. You shouldn't say, well, maybe it won't be a problem in Historic. No, the card, period, should be banned, period. There's no in this format, in this context, in this set of statistics. The card never should have been printed, and the card should be banned. It was a mistake, and what do you do when you find out mistakes? You fix them. So fire Mark Rosewater, fire that other dumbass from the other article, fire Aaron Forsyth, and anybody else involved in this card's testing, approval, and design. There you go. That's really fixing the problem. That's actually fixing the source of the problem. Banning Field of the Dead in every conceivable format it could ever be played in would actually be fixing the problem. But now I'm moving on to preventing the problem in the future. Because the problem isn't Field of the Dead. The problem is playtesting and R&D. Which, now R&D doesn't exist and they are playtested. It's the same individuals, okay? And they're still shit at their job. Like, you can rename yourself however many times you want. It doesn't make a damn ounce of difference. By the way, I already know what gameplay I'm putting on the background of this one. I hope you guys are enjoying it. Pretty much sums up why Standard is shit and why raising the power level to this level is complete AIDS. Control is out of control. There's way too much control. There's too much draw. There's too many broken individual cards like hand unlimited and untap everything. Certain planeswalkers are too powerful. Mono green is too powerful. Mono red is too powerful. The standard meta is too powerful right now. So them saying, well, we want to sell cards to modern players too, so we're going to up the power level standard on purpose. This is what you get. This gameplay right here is what you get. This should never happen. Field of the Dead should never have happened. Ultra consistency cards like Once Upon a Time and Drawn from Dreams should have never happened. Search for Azcanta should never have been printed. Chandra that dumps out emblems on turn 1 and can't be countered, she should have never been printed. But all this is part of the we want to sell more cards and make more money, so Standards policy that they now have. So anyway, moving on, Veil of Summer, ooh, shocker, much as we saw in Standard and Pioneer. Stop opening every explanation like that. You're just digging yourself in deeper. We should have seen this coming and already banned it already through evidence in Standard and Pioneer, but we're idiots. Like, literally, this is in between Standard and Pioneer. Are you kidding me? So we should have seen the writing on the wall and known better, but Veil of Summer's high efficiency is proving stifling to the overall metagame by neutralizing too many counterplay options. Suspending this card should bring more diversity to the answers and decks performing well in Historic. Are you saying that in the color pie, certain colors should be able to do certain things and not do other things, and that green shouldn't have f***ing counter spells? Because if so, that's correct. Even this conditional, borderline unplayable, sideboard relegated bullshit is still too powerful because it's still a fucking green counterspell. Oh, but this clearly you've never heard of this card from 10 years ago. Yes, I have. Yeah, Hexproof, I get it. But this functions as a counterspell, so shut the hell up. This is literally a green render silent, okay? That's what it functionally is. Oh, and guys, the fourth card, and I'm just shocked by this one, Oko, thief of millions of dollars in lost revenues from Wizards of the Coast. This metrosexual, ooh, fight the man, I'm a rebel, rules suck, like SJW fucking superhero, is now banned in Historic because we wanted to give Oko a chance in Historic. You shouldn't have. You should have known better. Once again, you're opening it with how stupid you are, but the data is showing similar, though less severe, issues to what we saw in Standard. Yes, there are 10% more answers in Historic to blow them up than there were in Standard. Who gives a shit? Who cares? He's still broken. He's not nearly as prevalent in the meta, only around 15% of the decks. Wait a minute. Didn't you just say earlier that, quote, only a couple decks are more than 5% of the meta? I thought they said no decks were 5% of the meta. I might have actually misread that. So what you mean is only a couple of the decks that we're not immediately banning right now are more than 5% of the meta. The rest is an overbearing shit show. Now, 15% isn't like that high, but I mean, how many people are really copycatting, aka net decking each other to the point where just a few decks rise to the top if nobody's playing the format in the first place? So, like, what I'm saying is it would have been way above 15% for Oko decks if they would have let Historic go for another month and would have promoted it harder. So them hiding behind that saying, well, it's not nearly as severe. Well, it would have been. And who cares? 15% of the time, nobody wants to play against us anyway. So, but several of these decks are seeing win rates in excess of 55% in high-level play. 55% is their limit. If it hits 60, they will just about consider emergency banning it. They've banned cards for 57. If I remember correctly, they've banned cards from Modern for hitting 56. Or for the deck they're in winning at a high-level tournament in large statistics, usually from MTGO, hitting 56% win rate. So 55 is the absolute limit. By the way, fun fact to remind you about how unbelievably shit Standard was because they refused to ban Aetherworks Marvel in time. In the second and third game matchups, the win rate of 4-color energy was 78%. 78. That is called the definition of a Swiss Army sideboard, because I believe it was actually like 51 or like 49% in the first game. But as soon as they got their 4-color, do it all, solve all the problems in your entire life sideboard, as soon as they dipped into that bag of tricks, they had what they needed to shut down anything. And that is why 3 and 4 color decks should, as a rule, be banned from Standard. You should be limited to 2 colors in Standard. We all know it. This would fix it permanently. Well, then on top of it, stop giving green and white counter spells and stop giving like red draw cards. There's no point if you're not going to have the colors stay in their damn lane. So anyway, they say this suggests that the meta could quickly grow. I kid you not, I did not read that before I said I bet this would be worse if they let it go for a month. So we're suspending Oko now to prevent that. The historic card pool is currently somewhere between Standard and Pioneer. Yes, I literally just said that. Didn't you hear me? With a few quirks of its own. Over time, those differences will increase, but for now, it makes sense that cards having shown themselves to be problematic in those formats would also be problematic in Historic. So once again, they reiterate, we're idiots. We should have seen what they did to the other formats and just replicated the ban either ahead of time or a hell of a lot sooner in Historic, but now here we are weeks and weeks and weeks later, and now we're dealing with it. Because we are the most cautious, in denial, just inactive, indecisive idiots that you've ever seen manage a card game. Then again, Shaman are still in Hearthstone, or whatever the hell card everybody says is ruining Hearthstone right now. They still won't do anything about them. Now get this, unlike Standard and Pioneer, Historic is a digital format. This means we have additional options for how we address these cards, and instead of banning them outright, we're using a new mechanism called suspension. Okay, let me just translate that from bullshit back into English. These cards are banned forever. They are never coming back. We would have to be out of our damn minds to bring Field of the Dead or Oko back. Once Upon a Time, Veil of Summer, maybe, but I mean, they're so problematic, why risk it? But like, these are so permanently banned, the sun will burn out before they even consider unbanning these. But because ban is such a scary word with such a negative connotation, we're calling it suspension. Okay, that's the bullshit that they're about to spew in this next section entitled, What Suspension Means. And you might notice through all of this, let me just give you a heads up, that there is literally no difference other than the name. Functionally, mechanically, there is no difference at all. There's no timer, there's no automatic timeout, there's no as soon as we get a new set, it's no. It's a ban. They have banned these 4 cards. They may unban them, but they're banned. And by the way, no, they're not going to unban Oko, and they're not going to unban Field of the Dead. Maybe like 10 years from now, but well, even then, no, Field of the Dead just can't get unbanned. It's a land, you can't stop it, board wipes can't stop it, nothing stops it. You can't let that back into the game. Oko, maybe. Probably not, but maybe. Like what would be the benefit? Even 10 years from now, why risk it? oh, there's 50 different decks that people are playing, but we need it to be 51. It is crucial that we make it 51 and we unban Oko. Are you kidding me? He's never getting unbanned. I mean, complete idiots make these decisions, so like maybe it's getting unbanned, but it shouldn't. So what suspension means? Historic is evolving rapidly both from general play and because it's receiving new cards fairly regularly. To support it properly, we need a way to control the balance that works well with Magic's history of using bans and restrictions while allowing more flexibility to adjust as Historic changes. I think there have been cards that were banned, unbanned, banned, unbanned again. I mean, I want to say Protean Hulk, and I feel, Painter's Servant maybe. I mean, it might be crossing formats. I don't know. I'm sure there's at least one card that meets that. So, yeah, no, you don't really need more flexibility than that. So suspending cards gives us that mechanism. No, it's just peace of mind, a softer blow for the players. It's all PR bullshit. So for gameplay purposes, a suspension works like a ban in that the card will not be legal to use in the format while it is suspended. So in other words, it's a ban. But unlike how we handle banning cards, we plan to use the flexibility that the digital format provides to move cards onto and off of the suspension list more commonly. Okay, every single ban and restricted announcement ever for Modern, they, for like a long time, have extensive meetings and playtesting for every single banned card on the list, and if they think it's safe to release one, or even if they're wrong, because they commonly are, they will unban it. So, in other words, this is a ban, and it's not a suspension. And they're handling this in exactly the same way that they do bans in Modern. The, quote, off of portion there is important. Suspension isn't a final verdict. Neither are bans. It's an indication that we think this card may be causing issues, and we'd like to see what the meta looks like without that influence. If you can't just back up from that and say this card is just problematic, it's a disaster, it never should have been printed, let's never let this into the game ever again, then you're idiots. I mean, that explains why the card was approved in the first place. So suspension is also a temporary measure. All the cards we're suspending here will be removed from the suspension list by or before the ranked historic queue returning in March. Oh, so they did assign a timer to it. I shouldn't have skimmed this. I should have actually read it. Some may be returned to the playable pool, likely because we believe the new environment provides the appropriate answers or countermeasures, and the rest will be moved to being fully banned. Wait, what the actual did that just say? Oh, I just read this like as if I'm buying into their bullshit. So all of the cards we're suspending here will be removed from the suspension list. Let me just skip ahead. But the ones that aren't returned to play will be fully banned. So I guess that they're really trying to sell the whole this is banned junior. If they think anything in the meta is going to change to allow Field of the Dead or Oko to be okay, they have lost their damn minds. So those cards are fully banned, I will assure you of that. But all they're saying is they're banned and will at this very specific time, at an opportune time right before tournament, will really strongly consider unbanning some of these maybe. There's still no difference, they're just assigning a very particular date to reassess it harder, which once again is literally what they do to the Modern ban list. Every single announcement. That's how Stoneforge Mystic got unbanned. Which, once again, it shouldn't have been. So I was going to skip the next section, but a little part of it caught my attention here. So it's how suspensions will be used. We are actively monitoring the card and deck stats in Historic and regularly evaluating whether we feel like there are issues there that need addressing. For the first Historic period, we're tending to keep a light touch. You shouldn't. You should be the most aggressive up front. Why would you want a lighter touch initially? That's incredibly stupid. So reacting less and seeing how things develop naturally. But you literally have all of Standard and all of Pioneer to use as a basis that came before this. Why would you want a light touch and to react less? That is the stupidest thing I've read in this entire article. But in the future, we're likely to move cards on and off of the suspension list much more frequently. Oh, get ready to waste your wild cards and rebuild your decks more often, guys. In a format like Historic, it's always our preference to provide answers to a problematic card rather than ban it. No, we don't need answers because unless it's a colorless card that costs 0, it's not an answer. Because then people either play the deck or the anti-deck, and that's stupid bullshit. So that's one of the roles of the future Historic anthologies. Oh god, so they're going to try to have an answer for Oko and an answer for Field of the Dead. They're just going to print like 9 different land destruction cards and say, well, we're unleashing Field of the Dead back into the game because they're obsessed with it. Just that card and the archetype. Just abandon it. What is so hard about that? Why do you have to bring it back in and then just go, now there's answers for it? Because now I have to buy and I have to play the answers, and I don't want to. I want to play my fucking deck. I don't want to go into a giant card pool and say, oh, look at all the creativity, look at all the options, this is so great. Oh, deck builder's paradise. Except that I have to make sure I'm playing this color so I can play this, this, or this, so that I can stop that toxic card that they left back into the meta. I have a better idea. Take problematic shit, ban it permanently, and let people get on with their lives and build whatever they want, instead of having to worry about answers. Oh, and answers usually go in the sideboard, and you just found out, once again, people don't want to waste 2 hours of their life playing one match against one slow deck run by some slow asshole, so they aren't going to have sideboards. So answers don't really do shit in Historic, do they? Now, if you thought this couldn't possibly get worse and couldn't piss you off more, oh, here we go. When cards are fully banned in Historic, you will receive wildcard reimbursement as normal, with the caveat that you won't receive multiple reimbursements for the same individual card. Now that sounds an awful lot like if you own 4, we're giving you 1, screw you, but then they give an example because they know that that was written so poorly. A player who has collected 2 copies of card X when it is banned in Standard, and they will immediately receive 2 wild cards at that time. Later, the card is also banned in Historic. Though they still have 2 copies, they won't receive additional wild cards because they've already been reimbursed for the copies they have. However, if they had crafted or otherwise collected more copies between the Standard ban and the Historic ban, they would receive reimbursement for those new copies after the Historic ban. The last section is the future of Historic. It's just a bunch of bullshit. It's them lying to you again and way too optimistic, and them covering for themselves again for not acting sooner and having known better, even though they've made like statements directly stating they should have known better based on Standard and Pioneer. It's almost like 2 different people like wrote this, or one person wrote it and then the other person like injected little bits of truth into it. Oh, you're going to ask. So yeah, it was written by the legendary author Archive. I keep feeling like just Archive, like no last name, just Archive would be like the badass name to a super badass, like Warforged, like sword mage from D&D, who also occasionally writes articles for Wizards of the Coast. So yeah, what do you guys think of this horse shit? I mean, I think it's all just absolute 100% bullshit to make people feel better about, well, maybe we're leaving the door open a little bit. You might get to play your toxic, abusive AIDS deck one more time, so don't give up on the format yet, when they know damn well all 4 of these are not coming back. Bare minimum 2 of them aren't. It's just more misleading BS information and them lying to us, again, as usual. Don't play Historic, it's a waste of time. Honestly, if you want to play some weird side format on Arena, Brawl is infinitely more enjoyable, more fun, and probably honestly more played. And when you stick people with a maximum of 1 of, it is so less likely that somebody will come up with some degenerate combo because you can only have 1 of the card. Then instead of abusive combos, unless they're going to play Go Fetch like they do in Commander all the time, it's really just like obnoxiously overpowered entire archetypes. With a lack of a sideboard, that is a problem, but they're also watching Brawl carefully for banning cards in there as well. So I would highly recommend Brawl over any of this bullshit. Once again, Historic is just a fake format that was made up in the interim while they get Pioneer ready. And it's just some psychological manipulation to make you feel better about cards cycling out. It's honestly just a manufactured farce, and nobody should play it. Unless you really, really, really like playing against the most broken shit from like the last 2 years. Which then you clearly have a mental problem. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next stupid announcement.